All right, today we're going to talk about some other aspects of the Cold War, some things where the tensions got pretty high between the United States and the Soviet Union. The first thing we're going to talk about is Sputnik. And Sputnik 1 was the first man-made satellite that actually made it into space, and a satellite is something that orbits the Earth, and Sputnik did actually orbit the Earth. For a few months. It's very small. You can see the picture right here. That sphere is actually only about the size, a little bit larger than the size of a professional basketball. Um, so it would orbit the Earth at about 18,000 miles per hour. When it was launched, you could see the booster rockets in space with the naked eye. It also transmitted a signal, and this was actually very scary for the United States because you could hear it from a ham radio, and people thought that it was transmitting some secret code or spying on us. They had no clue, but it actually really didn't do anything. All it did was transmit a beacon so that they could hear it, but it did nothing else. Um, and basically, what the cool or the fear of this is, it proves that the Soviets can launch a rocket into space. And once you can launch a rocket into space, you can hit targets all across the world. So you can put a missile up into space. It can come down anywhere you want it to come because it will kind of catch the orbit of the Earth, and it doesn't need a massive amount of fuel. It just needs to be able to get up into space, and then you can bring it back down wherever you want it. It lasted in, as I said, lasted in space for about 3 months. Orbits every 96 minutes. You can see how fast that is. Only an hour and a half, really, to, to orbit the Earth. The big important thing is this is a blow to our prestige in America. The fact that the Soviets were able to do something before us, it really, got us on the horse of trying to get after it. And we got after it in 1958. We were able to launch our first satellite. So not too far behind, but they did beat us in this instance. All right, one of the real dark marks of the Cold War comes from the U-2 spy plane incident. Francis Gary Powers is flying a spy mission over the Soviet Union, and in order to take high altitude photographs of different sites, and they was shot down by the Soviets. And once that happened, Eisenhower lied and said that it was not a spy plane, but it was a weather plane, and he Khrushchev knew that it was not a spy plane. He had actually captured Powers, and we felt that the pilot would probably have died in such an incident, so we didn't really know that. And it really makes Kennedy look bad that he lied to the world. He never really apologizes, and Khrushchev calls off a summit between the United States and the Soviet Union where they were going to kind of talk about, peace and what they could do to kind of ease tensions. And so, this really diminishes Eisenhower's prestige. All right, so Kennedy becomes president in January of 1961 when he takes office. And he doesn't like the idea of mutually assured destruction. He feels like, why should we just basically blow up the Earth in order to try to avoid war? So, if anything happens, all of a sudden now we have a full-out nuclear war. He doesn't like that idea. So what he does is he creates flexible response where now you can react in different ways to things that happen. So if someone sinks a ship here, we don't blow up Russia or the Soviet Union. We go after them, sanction them, do something different to the point where we're not actually going to blow up each other and everyone has to die. So we're looking at non-nuclear counters, and only in the last resort will we actually go full-blown nuclear. The Bay of Pigs invasion is something you may have heard of. You can see the location of the Bay of Pigs here. And basically what this is, it's a invasion that was planned to get rid of Castro. Castro had created a communist regime in Cuba, and we know that the basic idea of the Cold War was to keep communism away from the Western Hemisphere and keep it where it's at. The idea of containment. Well, Kennedy actually inherits the plan for the Bay of Pigs from Eisenhower. Eisenhower and his administration had been planning it. He kind of steps in and he takes the office of the presidency, and there's all these things that you don't know when you become president. And he's like, well, okay, the CIA had kind of already said we got this we got this going. Let us keep doing it. And he says, okay, that's fine. Turns out to be one of the biggest blunders of his presidency. We had basically taken a bunch of refugees, about 1,200 of them, and trained them and in Guatemala, and basically taught them to, what we wanted them to do, and we wanted them to go in and overthrow Castro. And they expected to kind of go in with little resistance, and then have people from Cuba rise up and take over with them. You can kind of take that back to Harper's Ferry. When we had John Brown trying to take over and free all the slaves, and hoping the slaves would join him. Same idea. The Cubans kind of got wind of it, and they were able to hold them off, and no one really defected from Castro. All of our men were all of the Cuban refugees were either killed or captured, and it was a complete failure, and really looks bad for the Kennedy administration. The next thing is the Berlin crisis. The Berlin crisis is creates the Berlin Wall. So a bunch of people thousands of people are trying to leave East Germany because of how poorly it's going. The communist regime isn't working there, and West Germany is flourishing. Families of the people in East Germany live in West Germany, and basically they're trying to get across. So they're moving from one side of Berlin to the other, and the communists don't like this, so they build a wall. Okay, and basically throughout the time, there's 5,000 successful escapes. Nearly 200 people are killed. There's some really creative ways that people try to escape. Some people got a hot air balloon, flew across the wall. Some guy drove a sports car through the barbed wire section of the fence in order to try to get there. The wall was built arbitrarily, so certain people and families would actually just kind of be split in half. There's instances where the wall goes directly through homes, and they would just brick up all the windows, and the home would become a permanent part of the wall. So you can see how people would want to cross one way or the other, and most of the time they want to go to West Berlin because they don't want to be separated from their family. All right, so there's this crisis, and Kennedy actually goes to the West German side of the wall, and he makes a speech. This is 2 years after the wall is erected, and it's really, really famous. He makes the quote of "Ich bin ein Berliner," basically saying I am a Berliner, and he's saying that all these people are kind of united, and he gets a little bit of flack from that. The fact that he's saying that he's from Germany, which a lot of people don't like that. He believes that East Berlin was in the Soviet sphere, but it should be controlled jointly between the United States and the Soviet Union. It shouldn't just be strictly the Soviet Union. He's just really basically trying to set this tone of defiance against the Soviet oppression in Berlin, and really start to get people on their side to try to get rid of this wall, and how it's really affecting a lot of people. And that's it for lecture today. Thanks.